All right, so good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be covering the notes 4.5, where we talk about angle, side angle, triangle congruence theorem. Now, this is very similar to what we did before. Notice the name, ASA. Notice where the location of the S is. That is very important to us because it's reminding us that the side that they mention must be in the middle. Very important. Now, of course, what that means to us, right, when we're actually going to mark our pictures and everything else, is that the side makes contact with the two angles. And again, that's why it has two A's in it, right? But the letter S, if it's going to be right in the middle, well, then there has to be contact with both angles. And so now we're going to use this here, right? We have this picture here to help us out a little bit. So it says, if two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the included, remember included means to be right between, between the included side of another triangle, then the two triangles should be congruent to each other. So as I'm looking at this picture, I notice, all right, well, let's see. This angle is the same as this angle. They have the same measurement. That's why they have the same mark. And so I think this was a little bit wrong there, but it should say angle A is congruent to angle D. And if you notice, we now have piece of information number one, we have an angle that's congruent. Again, not enough information. We should be showing three pieces of information before we use any of our new shortcuts. And yes, this is shortcut number 3 that we're learning today. Forgot to mention that earlier. Shortcut number 3, remember the other two are side, 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 and side angle side. Well, now we have a new one called ASA. So now when I look at this picture, I notice, hey, well, there's this other angle here that is exactly the same as this angle right here. So angle C is congruent to angle F, and this one it is ready for us. Angle C is congruent to angle F. And make sure there's going to be some questions like this on your assignment. Just make sure that when you're writing them out, you're using capital letters on big ideas so that it gives you the right answer or that it marks it correct. But that's piece of information number 2, which is yet another angle. And they did give me one more piece of information, and they said, hey, this side right here is exactly the same as this side. See, now they're marking a side, and the name of this side is called CA. So CA is congruent to FD. And there's the third piece of information, which is a side for us. Now, here's the thing, right? So my markings are done. They're there on the picture, but this is what we look at. Remember, order matters even with the shortcuts that we have. When I look at the side that was given, if I were to trace it, look at that. This side actually makes contact with both angles. That's what we were talking about up here. Because it touches both angles, then we do say that this side is right between these two. When I highlight this one, we also notice that, yes, this side also makes contact with the two same angles as this one. This is why we know that angle side angle congruency theorem will officially work for this problem. Again, it's very important that the side is right in the middle of the two angles that were given to us. And so now we can actually name our triangles. And just like before, we can name triangle number 1 in any order I want. For instance, I could call it BCA if I want to get away from alphabetical order. But now that I named this one, the second one, order is very important. If I use the letter B first, well, notice B is here, has no marks. That means E should be the very first letter for this one because it also has no mark. The letter C, which is my pink angle, well, then that should go with letter F. And the A, which is orange, should go with the letter D, which is orange. This is what we call a congruency statement. We have now said the two triangles are congruent by this shortcut. Remember, we have 3 shortcuts to look at. This is the one that worked for this picture. And again, look at the question that's right below. It says, how can you tell the congruent side is actually included? Well, remember what we just said. the side must make contact with the two marked angles. That's how we know. This is how we know that ASA is working properly when the side is making contact with both of the angles that are marked. And yet again, why this is why it's so important for us to mark our angles very carefully and our sides, right? All markings. Now, at the bottom, there's a little question here for us. Very similar to some of the questions that are on your homework. This is how quick your homework can be today. It says, explain why these triangles are not congruent by ASA. All right, well, first, let's make sure we have the right information. It says I need two angles. Well, let's see, I have this angle goes with this one. All right, I've got an angle. They gave me this angle. They said angle C is the same as angle F. All right, looks good so far. I have two angles. There's two A's. And then they said this side gets a mark, and so does this one. But remember what we just finished saying. It says, why is it that ASA doesn't work here? If I were to highlight the side that was marked, so there it is. Notice how my highlighted line, yeah, it makes contact with that pink angle, but it never made contact with that orange one. This is why angle side angle doesn't work here. Angle side angle has to be very specific, as we've mentioned before. So we're going to say it's not angle side angle since, look at this side, BC, so side BC or segment BC and segment EF does not make contact so it doesn't make contact with the two marked angles. And if that's the case, then we're basically saying it's not the included side. So it is not the included side. Because of that, we cannot use ASA. All right. Now, continuing the notes, you're going to see the examples that we're about to do. It's the same type of questions you're going to see in your classwork. In fact, if you put your classwork and the problems we're about to do side by side, you'll see that they're asking you to do the same thing. Okay? Now, let's flip this over there for our last page of the notes. And notice, this is what I was telling you. Look at your classwork. Same type of question. Same follow-up. Look at that. So make sure you're copying these examples so that you can do your classwork very easily. So example number 1. Determine if each pair of triangles are congruent by ASA. So they want me to check ASA for these. Again, this is what you're doing in your homework as well. All right, well, if they want ASA, I'm going to keep track of everything they give me. So the first thing I notice right off the bat is, hey, they gave me an angle. So that's one angle in each triangle. All right, one angle's out of the way. Now, technically there is another angle. Remember, there's an angle that should automatically be marked at all times, and that is vertical angles. Look at that. These angles are always equal to each other because of the concept of vertical angles. Hey, that's two angles so far. That's great. Almost there. We just have to show that the side, and not just any side, the side in the middle is equal to each other. Well, if you look carefully, I know it's a little tough to see. This says it has a number 5 there. This one also has a number 5. Well, if that's the case, then this side and this segment, this segment and this segment are equal to each other. Well, then we just showed another side. So let's see, we have enough info. Now we have to make sure that it's following the correct order for both triangles. So let's bring in our highlighter. Here's the side that was marked. And did it touch both angles? Absolutely. All right, now I'm going to check this triangle over here. Here's the side that was marked. And the question is, did it make contact with both angles that are marked? Absolutely again. So then that just means, look, this is definitely following angle, side angle in this triangle, and this one here too. Look, angle, the side is marked, and so is the angle. But now here's what they said. They did say name a congruent statement or name the triangles. So you have to kind of do two things. I have to name the first triangle, whatever order I want. For instance, I could call it triangle BAP. So BAP is congruent. Now I'm going to name this triangle, but now order matters. Here's where you have to watch out. First of all, don't forget the triangle symbol. If I started this one with the letter B, notice it has no mark. Well, then I have to start this one with the letter C. My next letter was A, that has a 90. Then I'm going to start it with the letter D. Or I'm going to put the letter D in the middle. And then the last letter is P as well. But now we can say by this angle, side angle, congruency theorem. And there's our answer. So they want two things written out. You're going to do the same thing on the classwork for the first questions on the classwork. So now let's look at B. When I'm looking at B, well, again, it's time for me to put my marks. So I see that they have this angle in common. That's only one angle. So let's see. I know I want to make ASA work, and I have one angle so far. In the other class, somebody said, well, that's two angles. No, it's one in each. So that's only one angle. And now that's it. I don't have any other information except for the fact that it's a right triangle. And if they didn't give me any numbers, then I really have no idea what these measurements are. Now you might go and say, well, they look like they're the same. Remember, we don't base it on that. We have to base it on given facts or information. And since there's nothing else, look, there's no vertical angles. They don't even share this side. They're actually pulled apart from each other. Then I don't have enough information. So not enough information. And if that's the case and we have no or not enough information, then we say not congruent. That's what we're looking for here. We didn't have enough information to use ASA like they wanted me to. So you're going to do the same thing on the classwork for the first two questions in the classwork there. And then we get to question number 2. Now in question number 2, as you can see it there, I'll just move it up a little in case people are still copying the notes there. But it says, decide whether you can use the given information to show that these two triangles are congruent. Now you might say, yeah, but I don't even have a picture. Well, that's why we can draw it. So we're going to draw two triangles. It says triangle LMN. Okay, let's just draw a triangle. And I'm going to call it LMN. Now, we want to see if they're congruent, so let's try to make them look like each other. So we'll draw another triangle here. And we're going to call this one P, Q, and R. So they didn't give me a picture. Well, we can easily create one. Now it's time for me to bring in all the information. So information number 1 for this problem tells me that angle L is congruent to angle R. Then I'm going to mark L and I'm going to mark R. All right, that's fine. I've got an angle. Piece of information number 1 turned out to be an angle. Piece of information number 2, we look at that symbol and we see that it's going to be another angle again. So piece of information number 2 is another angle. So I'm going to mark angle M, but I'll double mark it because it's a new one, and angle Q, which I'll also double mark. All right, not bad. We have 2 angles. Now remember, we have a list now of options. It could be side, 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 side angle, side, or angle, side, angle. Those are my 3 choices that we have so far. But if I already marked 2 angles, then there's no way it can be side, side, side. Again, I marked 2 angles. There's no way it can be side, angle, side, right? I have 2 A's in it. This is my only option so far, or that's left. And then the last piece of information is this. Notice this is not an angle. Here we have 2 sides being marked. So piece of information number 3 is a side. All right, 2 angles and a side. All right, it's looking better for us here. LM, okay, and PQ. All right. Now, before you rush and you start going, hey, they do work. They are angle, side, angle. You have to check. See, if I highlight this side, we look at it carefully, and we notice that this side that I have marked does touch the two angles. So hey, ASA is looking good. But when I go over here and I mark the side that we marked, notice, yes, it touches that purple angle, but it doesn't touch the red. This one right here is failing ASA. It's not following ASA the way it's supposed to. So it fails ASA. This one did fine with it, but this one kind of failed it, which just means one thing. Remember, we had already crossed out these rules because they weren't even options. This one ended up failing. Well, that brings me to option number 4. Option number 4 is not congruent. These triangles, we don't have enough information to say that they're congruent to each other, so we just say not congruent. And now, our very last problem here of the week before you take your Thanksgiving break, we're looking at example number 3. And there you could still see that other picture. Now, example number 3 is a proof, and what I wanted to show you is that when you're working with your proofs, well, we have an entire line in our word wall that can help us with that. In our word wall, we have this bottom line, and this is what we use to help us with our proofs. If I flip it over, look, it just continues. These are all old concepts that can help me out with these problems. So I'm going to address it as we go along. Okay. So now when I'm working with a proof, we already know the very first reason is for me to give out, or my first statement will be my givens. And so here is all the information they gave me. Well, then I will put that right here. Right? That's where we start. We have to start somewhere. So AC bisects angle DAB. And so check this out. It's actually saying that it's going to bisect two separate angles. And they already gave me the reason over here to kind of guide me a little bit. It says the definition of angle bisector. But notice, two angles got cut. Well, if two angles were cut in half because of this angle bisector, well, then I get to use this reason 2 times. Again, because they cut not just one angle, which will go here, but they cut a second angle. So I get to use this reason twice. But now notice, my picture doesn't have any marks in it, and it shouldn't, because we haven't made any congruent statements. So here's where your word wall can help you. We know we're talking about an angle bisector. According to this, here's the word definition of angle bisector. Look at what your statement should look like. I should be naming 2 angles, and I should be marking 2 angles side by side. And notice where they happen. They happen right in the middle where the B is. That's where they occur in your picture. So when I'm looking at this very first one right here, angle A gets marks. I know not perfect there, but just trying to get the idea across. So that means in this letter, around this letter, where the letter A is located, that's where I should have 2 little angles. And we do, look at this. We have this little angle right here. But before I mark the next one, I'm going to write this one. B, A has to be the middle, and then C. So angle BAC is congruent, but now I get to mark the other one right next to it. So you see they're equal to each other. This one is D, A has to be the middle, and then C. So angle DAC. But you see that took care of this first one with the A was in the middle. So that's where everything had to happen. But if it says this one also got cut, well then look. At the letter C, it gets marks as well. And because it says angle bisector, well, I know I'm going to be naming 2 angles, just like I saw on my word wall. But now all of this is going to happen where the letter C is. Well, yeah, look, I do have 2 side-by-side angles. So this angle right here, which is called BCA, the C has to be the middle, is congruent to the one right next to it, which is DCA. And that's because of the angle bisector concept. But if you notice, look, I don't have enough information yet. These are my 3 options for saying that these 2 triangles, the ones that are side by side, are congruent to each other. These are my 3 choices. But there is one thing that you should be marking. right, from our past and something we've talked about, and that is this. They're sharing the side AC. And if both triangles share a side, then they're automatically congruent to each other. So I'm going to say AC, now this is a side, we put a line on top, is congruent to AC. So we put the segment symbol. And the reason for that, don't forget, when they share a side, it's called the reflexive property. And I know many tend to forget, yeah, it's because I don't know how to spell it. Well, remember, in your word wall, see, this is the rule I just applied. They share a side, so we call it the reflexive property. And now if I look, let's see, were 3 sides marked? Nope. 2 sides? Nope, only 1 side was marked. There's the 1 side. Now the question is that side touching both angles? Because it has to be in the middle. Well, here's the side that was marked. And yes, it is definitely touching the green angle and the red angle. Then we have a winning reason there, everybody. Angle side angle, congruency theorem is what helps us finish this proof. With that said, you're going to get started on the classwork, and hopefully you can also get the homework done as well. That is your goal for today. Have a good day, everybody, and enjoy your break.